We all know the name of Alexander the Great, but we really know something about his life or his empire? Alexander the Great was an emperor of the ancient age. He conquered with only 25 years an empire that became the first power of Europe. His empire was 5.2 million square kilometers. When he was child, his father put the best teacher of the time to him, Aristotle. With this type of education, he began to rule in the 336 BC, and he finished it with his death in the 323 BC. Alexander not only wanted to conquer an extensive territory, he also wanted to make a solid country where there were different people with different cultures and where everyone got along. His empire was enormous. A lot of empires have tried to conquer countries, but the difficult part is to maintain the cities. He had a special method. When he arrived at the different places, he didn't impose his culture. He let the people maintain his traditions so the people feel good and not oppressed.
Alexander the Great conquered a lot of territories in a very small space of time. He was a very great strategist because he won a big number of battles against numerous kings and the Persian Empire of Darius III. When he proclaimed king, he took revenge of the death of his father Philip II. The first conquest of Alexander was Greece. He took some weeks to have the whole country at his mercy. The population of Greece accepted Alexander as their leader for fight in the war against the Persian Empire of Darius III. And then he took his army and fought against the Persian Empire. He won the Battle of Garnico in the northwest of the actual Turkey, and that battle was the first important victory against the Persians. And in less than 1 year, most of the territory of the Anatolian Peninsula was conquered by his army. In the year 333 before Christ, he won a decisive battle against Darius III in the Battle of Issos, where he humiliated the king of the Persians. Then he conquered Phoenicia, Syria, Gaza, and Egypt, where he was coronated pharaoh thanks to his general Ptolemy, and he established a pharaonic dynasty of Macedonian origin that lasted 3 centuries, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and also he founded the city of Alexandria. After his period in Egypt, he conquered the zone of Mesopotamia, and in the Battle of Gaugamela he won again to Darius III, thanks to his knowledge of strategy that supposed the end of the Persian Empire and Babylonian Hana surrounded to him. During the years, he reached territories like the actual Iran, Afghanistan, and part of the India. In those territories, he defeated many local kings. And this is the history of how the Macedonian Empire expands through the east of Europe, north of Africa, and center of Asia.
The great Macedonian emperor finally won the Persian Empire after conquering Asia Minor, Syria, Provincia, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. He won at the Battle of Guatemala against the Persian Empire, commanded by Darius III. This important battle took place on October 1, 3131 before Christ, and that was the beginning of the decline of the Persian Empire. Alexander decided to divide all his kingdom among his three most beloved and loyal generals. For the first, the kingdom of Macedonia and Greece. For the second, the kingdoms of Asia Minor, Syria, Mesopotamia, and the ancient Persian Empire. For the third, the kingdom of Egypt. After a lot of pain, he died the 13th of June of 3023 before Christ in the palace of Nabucodonosor II, thanks to a high fever. After the conquest of Persia, he decided to conquer and discover the unknown India. There he almost died because her army left him alone, but he came to Macedonia, descending through the Indus Valley and the Persian Gulf. The internal revolts of the successors of Alexander the Great can be one thing that started the decline because they wanted more territories. The first war of the Diadochos was in 1319 before Christ. It was a conflict between Polyperconte and Craterus. The finish that finished with the death of Antipatrio. Polyperconte was sent back to Macedonia with Craterus, but only marched to the reach Sicilia when Alexander died. In conclusion, we can see that Alexander's empire lost almost all his power thanks to the bad organization of her successors and the internal revolts and what they had.
Now we have heard about the life of Alexander the Great, the decline and rise of its empire. But why isn't he and his empire as famous as others? What do we know and think nowadays about the Macedonian Empire? It is undeniable that the Macedonian Empire conquered more territories than other empires in less time. These territories, for example, the Christian reconquest or the conquest of the Byzantine Empire, took much longer. However, they still have more recognition. Many people will assign this to the fact that it was a long time ago, but other empires from the ancient age have more recognition, without going too far away, the Romans or the Greeks. Probably one of the main causes of this lack of recognition is its bravery, or its lack of a signature culture. I explain myself. As my teammates have said before, when they conquered a territory, they respected the culture and religion of that place, so they made the Macedonian Empire without a characteristic culture. For example, Egyptians are known for their pyramids, Greeks for their gods, and Romans for the culture they established. But the Macedonian Empire hasn't nothing characteristic. Because of this, there aren't facts such as the language or the way of life that could influence nowadays. Now we get to the second question. What do we know about them? Most of the people do know who they are, who Alexander the Great was, and the fact that they were the most powerful and big empire of the time. However, there are some things essential to know about them if you are interested in history, such as the fact that they founded Alexandria. The Macedonian Empire is a very curious and underrated empire which is totally worth knowing about. For example, did you know that the fruit salad has its name because it was created in the Macedonian Empire?